9:34. It's 9:34. I think everybody who's going to be here is here. We've got proof of publications in your books, starting on page 1. We have a quorum with all 5 board members present. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none. We'll move on to status reports. Legal, Mary?
I have no specific legal status report. Our office will be commenting on items as they appear on the agenda.
Is there any questions for Mary that isn't an agenda item? Hearing none, we'll move on. Status report engineer, Mr. Edens? Is there any questions for your engineer? Hearing none, move on. I've got nothing. Well, actually, scratch that. So we're having our meeting today, which is the middle of July. We have, in our normal meeting schedule, we have another meeting already advertised and scheduled for August 4th, but then we also have a reconvened landowners meeting scheduled for August 22nd. So I was going to ask the board, do we want to go ahead and make the decision now to cancel the August 4th meeting and plan on having a regular board meeting immediately following the reconvened landowners meeting in August?
Yes, because we couldn't even come up with a date in August, so that's why August.
Yeah, I remember August being pretty tough for scheduling purposes, so is there...
So I make a motion that we have the landowners meeting and then immediately have the regular.
Advertise a regular meeting to immediately follow the reconvened landowners meeting?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Second. If during the course of this meeting, we decide that we need another meeting before the landowners meeting, can we still schedule one?
Yeah, and it can be any day or time as long as we have enough time to advertise it for it.
Can we take this item and move it to the end of the meeting? In case anything comes up during this meeting where we'd want to meet again. So we don't do things.
We already have a motion.
We have a motion and second, so we can vote on that now, and then if we want to bring it up later during board member comments or some other time in the meeting, I don't think there's anything that precludes us from having that discussion again. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to vote against the motion, and only because we can cancel the meeting at any time. As Zach said, if it comes up something today that we want to revisit, we have this regular schedule. We had agreed previously to keep that schedule.
No, we didn't. We couldn't all agree on the August 4th meeting. That's why we set a special meeting for the end of August.
But no, I
So
think
maybe you'll let me read my statement here. This might be an appropriate time that I would like to make a motion that this meeting be continued until after the contested election of supervisors are resolved. Substantive issues should not be resolved by this holdover board, and there is no time-sensitive or emergency matters on today's agenda. Our attorney, Mary Viator, strongly advised us all last meeting that the Board of Supervisors should not take action on major issues while the election results are under review. The granting and recording of an access easement to be discussed as agenda item F2 is a substantive and major catastrophically changing the dynamics of PalMar. It should be tabled until the election results are confirmed. That's where Martin County stands very firmly, that this meeting is not, and the results of this meeting are in question, period. So
is that a motion?
Yes, he made a motion to suspend this meeting and reconvene after the reconvene landowners meeting.
So just to get this straight, now there's two
after the
motions.
election.
Yeah, we need to
Oh,
withdraw.
sorry, after the election is resolved. My mistake.
Commissioner,
we
need to withdraw the first motion before we can have the second, but if
I will withdraw my second of his motion.
I'll withdraw the motion.
and then we have your particular pending motion that we reset, or not recess, that we continue this meeting until the August 22nd date.
Well, until after the election is finalized.
Okay, after the election.
I'd like to insert something in the time. Is this the proper time to do that?
There hasn't been a second yet.
I will second the motion.
Okay, so now we have seconds of discussion.
Yes.
This meeting, we were going to deal with the mowing contractors. They've been bump back and bump back and bump back. I think we're probably going on 4 months that we're trying to get this resolved. We spent an extensive amount of time out there again on Sunday to do everything that it would take to put this matter at rest for this meeting. I'd like to deal with at least that. We can do that somehow. So these guys can either get the nod to go ahead or make a decision on how we're going to handle the mowing. It is being mowed right now, and it's being mowed very well.
Okay, how about I alter my motion to say something like, you're probably going to have to help me, that once we deal with the mowing contract issue, which is not a life-changing event, that we then would continue the rest of the meeting after the meeting.
So the motion is to address the mowing agenda item and then suspend the current, or recess the current meeting and reconvene the meeting once the election has been,
After the,
election has been finalized, I guess?
yes.
Are you okay with that second?
I am okay with
All right, so we have a motion, a second. Are there any?
Yeah, discussion. This is out of control. We have a scheduled meeting with an agenda that's been published. We have everyone here. You're trying to make motions to pick it apart and move things around. By statute, we confirmed this last time, I am on this board validly. Is that correct, Mary?
You continue in your position
Correct.
till the, let me just make sure I have it clear for the record.
Go ahead.
That a supervisor would serve until his or her successor is elected and qualified pursuant to the provisions of section 298.11(2). So the response is yes.
Correct.
But I will say, however, that it was our recommendation that we should be careful in going forward with major issues, and that was our recommendation, not to take major, consider major items.
And with all due respect, that advice is not in the statute.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So for the statute, we have a board, we have a quorum. We have 5 board members here sitting appropriately. What's happening here is we have 2 commissioners that are trying to push any decision to this board off until they can get their Martin County employee on the board to alter decisions.
Well, Mr. Satt, I do believe that their intent is to make sure that we have a confirmation as to the election results.
And we do have one board member that's trying to further his personal business by being a member of this board. If we want to get into a spitting match, I'm not intimidated by you, Zach. Okay?
We're all landowners.
That's obvious to everybody
So
on the planet.
are the governmental entities, which is something everybody seems to forget. Palm Beach County is a landowner. Martin County is a
So there's a motion,
landowner.
right? There's a
There was a
motion.
motion and a second, correct. Is there any further discussion?
Well, in number one, I'm going to vote against the motion, but there are other items on this agenda as well that I think deserve to be taken up today. There's the information about the culverts. There's some under new business GI, I think is a very important item that we need to address. I know there are a couple of landowners here that had requested to address the board on some issues regarding drainage. So it's literally the entire agenda that deserves to be heard. There's, you know, with the exception of, I get it, I understand, you know, the counties are upset about the possibility of issuing the easement, but, you know, all of these issues are important, practical issues, and the board's convened that we need to do our business.
Further
Does
discussion?
this board have errors and omissions or director's insurance?
Yes.
Or- It does.
Yeah, we have an insurance policy. In fact, it was requested at the last meeting by,
What are the limits of that?
I have to go back and check. I want to say it was $1 million, but I'm not 100% sure. They've changed it over the last couple of years.
I bring that up because
I think it's about the money.
if what's proposed is approved, there's a lot of landowners in PalMar. There's 161,000 Martin County residents. There is however many million Palm Beach County residents. There's 22 million Florida State residents. I just,
1.5 million.
okay, there we go. Wow, that's pretty cool.
And a little more.
I just, opening legacy property owners that have enjoyed these properties for millennia, generations, to expose them to future liability. Lou, in your tree stand, you're doing your hunting that you've done forever, and all of a sudden you have, some uninvited guest. This is completely uncontrollable. Wander under your property, you accidentally harm that person. I mean, I just don't understand why. I'm going to stop now. It's just boggles my mind. Boggles my mind.
Well, if this helps, Commissioner Jenkins, one of the handouts I passed out is the Martin County Property Appraiser's printout on general information on these three properties that are subject to the easement. And their property use code and property class is 9400, right-of-way, streets, roads. And neighborhood considered 36900, right-of-way and easements countywide. So your own county has the property use for this property as easements, right-of-ways, streets, roads. And this is the intended use.
And this board has the discretion whether to enact that or not.
Absolutely. Just wanted to remind you of what your county
Just want to
has
remind you of what you're about to do.
on your website.
Anyway, can we get to my motion?
Well, I think Commissioner Ray, yes,
I seconded the motion, including the mowing. None of this is, putting it off a month is not going to, the mowing, I understand the impact and that the fact that it's being done already, but the rest of this is, since we weren't going to have a meeting today anyway, when we adjourned our last meeting, or before we adjourned our last meeting, this was not on the books, I would suggest that we do take up the issue of the mowing, adjourn the meeting, and then after the landowners meeting where the election is decided, then adjourn and reconvene as a regular board meeting.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Could you read the motion one more time now?
So the motion was to, to take up the mowing item and then immediately after recess the current meeting and reconvene the next regular board meeting after the election results have been finalized. I believe is the basis of it. So we would do nothing else on the agenda other than mowing, and then we wouldn't have another meeting until after the elections have been finalized.
Just kind of a question or clarification, maybe this is more for Mary. With that language, I would suggest that there's a possibility that on August 22nd it may not be finalized.
Possibly, yes.
So is this motion saying that we're just going to not have a meeting until then?
So what I mean,
Then we'll have another motion at that point.
correct. My interpretation of the motion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that when we will reconvene the landowners meeting on the 22nd. Whatever happens in that meeting, if it's still not decided at that point, we would have to then recess the landowners meeting again and reconvene that landowners meeting again at a date certain at the reconvened meeting on August 2nd. So we would be doing the same thing again. So yeah, my understanding is, if I'm correct, that there would be no regular board meetings until after the election is finalized.
So after the election is finalized?
Right, so once we have an actual conclusion and a new person has been elected, is what Commissioner Jenkins, unless he wants to change the motion, that's the way I understand the motion.
And now I agree that the mowing should be taken care of. There is nothing on this agenda that is time.
Right, the mowing is the only thing that would be handled today. Everything else would be delayed until after the elections are finalized.
Well,
Based on this motion.
right. So couple of issues, but one, let me just ask the question because I'm really not sure. We still have the ability to amend the budget and to lower the proposed assessment.
Right, so the $15 was sent to the county as the trim rate, and that will show up on everybody's trim notices. The final rate, typically the counties want it by September 1st. I think they can take it up to, it's either September 10th or September 15th. Every county is a little different on when they kind of need to start finalizing things. But basically, we have until early September to make a change in a downward direction only. So we can make a change lower between now and that September timeframe. We cannot increase it between now and then.
But I don't know if it was on the agenda today for that consideration.
It is on the agenda today.
Yeah, so I mean, that is something,
Yes, at the last meeting, it was told to leave it on the agenda
Right.
to discuss again.
But did they not make a determination as to the amount that they were proposing?
15.
They approved 15, and that's what was set for the trim.
Okay.
And they asked for the item to be left on the agenda to consider any changes to the budget between now and the final.
Okay, but they could do that in September, the first meeting in September.
As long as we met early enough in September, yes, that would be the drop dead time, would be an early September meeting would be the last time they would have the ability before we have to send the final rate. We have to basically approve the final rate to the county.
well,
Chicken, so, I mean, you could always maybe amend your motion, so say wait till the reconvened or annual landowners meeting is concluded, at least till September, till the September board meeting, which is the first week in September.
well, right now it's scheduled for September 1st.
Yes. So that would-
And-
That would be time early enough.
Yeah, and as of right this moment, there's still a meeting scheduled for August 4th.
Correct. Pending this motion.
We haven't done anything yet to
Right.
to
Those
change
meetings have
anything.
already been advertised as part of your annual meeting schedule.
Correct,
Yes.
yeah. So my position is still, we move forward with our meeting and agenda today and continue with the currently advertised meeting schedule, which would be a regular meeting August 4th and another regular meeting on September 1st.
Is the current motion canceling the August 4th meeting?
Right, my understanding is that motion would cancel any regular board meetings until after the elections have been finalized.
So if the elections go to circuit court, it could be over a year.
Not necessarily, because if the landowners agree on the election results, that would be the election results. If somebody wanted to contest it, they would have to individually, an entity or whatever, would have to go ahead and petition the circuit court. But that does not stop the actual,
So the if the landowners agree as to the next supervisor, then we'll have a meeting. That's the motion?
Basically, yes.
My question is, what if it could take quite a long time for the landowners to agree? And in the end, if the landowners
there's
can't
an
agree,
election procedure that this board approved, and it will be reviewed, and recommendations or results will be announced at that August 22nd.
So if the election isn't resolved,
Well, she's saying it will be.
am I keeping up with this? Are we postponing the regular meetings after that?
So
So it's time it is resolved?
until the correct motion was to suspend regular board meetings until after the election is resolved. What Mary is saying is the challenge that Zach is talking about, taking it to court, would actually be based on a final result of that election. So we'd have to have a final result, and then that would be taken to court. That it wouldn't prevent the final result to take it to court. Is that what I'm understanding?
There are certain election procedures that this board adopted, and they will be reviewed, and then it will be decided at the annual landowners meeting
by who?
by the landowners, by the landowners based on the proxies that were submitted and all of the comments and contentions that were raised at the annual landowners meeting, June, I believe, 27th.
And what happens if the landowners cannot agree?
We will have to see what happens.
So that's where I'm at. we will have to see what happens. That's my concern of extending this landowners meeting for some time, because if we'll have to see what happens, to me is not a time certain. And I'm concerned about trying to move our regular meetings that we're required to have by statute until the time period called, we'll have to see what happens.
Zach, you're running around in circles. This
Well,
is ridiculous.
can I
She's
just-
saying the results, you can't challenge the results if we don't have results.
Right.
So we're going to have results, then we're going to have a meeting, and if you'd like to challenge whatever the hell you'd like to challenge, that's the appropriate time. We are talking about postponing this meeting until after the election results, whether you like them or not, or intend to challenge them or not, period. Now, we can dance around another 10 or 15 minutes here, but I think you're...
Well, Commissioner Jenkins, it seems that you understand who decides the election better than I do. So maybe you could explain to me who decides the election results.
The election procedures are the ones that dictate that this board has approved what are the procedures that we will follow in making the announcement and determination.
That's like the fifth time, so.
Correct. But we haven't talked about who. I've only heard the landowners.
It's a landowner's issue.
Landowners. At the landowners meeting, the landowners could not agree. What if they still can?
No, that's not true. The landowners took a vote.
There was a provision in election procedures to allow for all the supporting information for the objections that were raised at the June 27th meeting. And then as part of that review, then the objections are reviewed and the comments will be announced.
Mary, just real quick, because you said something, you said...
And it's going to be in accordance with the Florida statutes.
Yeah. But you mentioned the objections that were raised at the meeting. My understanding was that landowners had 5 days
Had 5
to
days.
submit, and I...
Business days.
5 business days, and I just want to make sure that...
That made it July 5th.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you received the 68 pages of objections that I had submitted.
I'm going to have to...
Yes,
to this-
I received multiple emails and yes. and
Okay,
quite a bit.
okay, so it wasn't just 27th, it was
No,
anything that came in timely after that.
Right.
As long as it was dealing with the original objection.
Sure.
right. Yeah, all the backup to the original objections that were received from both landowners, from all the landowners participating were all received within those. I never got anything after the July 5th, so I believe everything did come in by July 5th from all parties objecting. In the public record, they're all sitting in the office, so.
So
All right, so we have a motion.
Yeah, let me recap one more time, because a lot of this has caught me unaware. So if we postpone the meeting today only, except for mowing, and we go to the landowners meeting next, and we skip the August 4th, and we don't resolve the election, we have no more regular meetings until the election is resolved.
Based on the motion, we would not hold a regular meeting until the election is been resolved.
Okay, so if that takes, 7 months, how do we conduct business?
It's not till it's resolved, because in fact, it's for the determination as a result of the election procedures with those, with trying to determine and having those final results. Those were going to be reviewed, and we would be having this, you're going to have your annual landowners meeting, which was reconvened. After that, then you will, and my recommendation is to hold off on this until following the election results are determined.
Well, maybe I'm misunderstood Mr. Jenkins'
Okay,
motion.
so I think I was just clarified. So to help this, that we would not have a meeting until after the August 20, whatever,
Second.
period.
Okay,
So
so
it's not resolved, which is going to be resolved, but if it's not resolved, we can still conduct business.
okay, so we're going to amend the motion that we will suspend regular board meetings until August 22nd, following the reconvened landowners meeting.
Yes.
The second, okay with that amendment?
That help you?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a new motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No. So that motion dies 3-2. All right. Field maintenance report.
The mowing is continued. It's getting thicker as you get towards the back, which slows things down a little bit. But Lou, I believe you've been out there.
Yes.
How do you think it's going?
Yeah, I think the mowing's going excellent. It's a quality job. There's the guys that are proposing to take over the mowing went with us. They've seen the example that's set. We went Sunday with a few more questions. Those have been resolved. Tim's sitting in the audience today, hoping to get this, see where we're going to go from here.
So with the mowing, it's revealing culverts coming through the canal banks. The culverts have been set or seem to have been set at low points. When they dug the canals and pushed up the dirt, the original developers dropped in culverts to keep the sheet flow moving within PalMar. And as everything is cut, these culverts are revealed. So far, the majority of them have either been crushed by heavy equipment or backfilled to stop water flow. Man-made, problems. I don't know who's responsible for it. I don't know who's been back there besides South Florida Water Management and FWC. I don't know who has an interest in filling PalMar up with water, but I thought this is an appropriate time to bring that up. At the field report that the majority of the culverts so far have been crushed or filled in to prevent water from sheet flow, thereby pooling water within the bounds of PalMar, pooling water in between the canals, and not releasing water down eventually into the North Fork of Loxahatchee. I was at a Loxahatchee River meeting after our last meeting. Commissioner Marino, you were there, and the issue of saltwater intrusion came up, and how important it is to have fresh water continuing to come down through PalMar. And seeing these crushed culverts kind of put some history behind what's really been going on out there for the last 30, 40 years while it wasn't being maintained. That concludes my field report.
Just a quick question. So the mowing that you're talking about is mowing that's being done on behalf of the contractor, not the new contract for mowing. So this is
Right.
This is under existing maintenance.
Existing maintenance at no cost to the taxpayers and no cost to PalMar.
Right. Okay. So and later on the agenda we're going to talk about the mowing contract, which is
The potential new mowing.
okay. Just wanted to separate the two.
Right, this mowing is not that, right?
Right.
So this was not revealed at any other point in time other than just now? And you've been doing the mowing for how long, Zach?
Doing the mowing it's in the record, a few years.
I want to say this is going on third year.
Second amended.
So
We talked about.
what's been mowed in the past is the top of the levees, so that there's access, that vehicles can get down the canal banks and make sure that there's no obstructions, and make sure the water's moving as it should. After I think it was 2 meetings ago, we clarified with Mr. Higgins that we could do the canal banks up down to 6 inches. In doing the canal banks, that's when it's revealing these crushed culverts. If that helps.
Yep, it does. Thank you.
Any other questions for?
Let me point out to Mr. Gaza's comments about, blocking sheet flow. There's a tug of war that's going on within the Waxahachie River watershed. And there's a certain group that is saying more fresh water, let's get it into the river, let's let it flow. And then there is another faction that's saying, no, let's hold it all back and preserve the wetlands and keep the hydrochloric wet. That battle, I don't think we're going to be able to solve it, but PalMar is a major contributor the freshwater of Loxahatchee River, and that's recognized, and the control point is actually controlled by Mark County at the end of the canal, the name of the canal. But there is a funnel point from most of the PalMar fresh water that dumps into Ranch Colony Canal, which goes down and feeds the river. And so in terms of the Loxahatchee River Restoration Plan, the control should be at those locations. It does not need to be within PalMar itself. Let the water go.
So, and that controls under the jurisdiction of Martin County. Those water control structures.
Yes.
So what's
But it's going to be taken over as part of the restoration plan, and it'll be, the schedule will be set by the Corps, and it'll be operated by SFWMD/Martin County.
Possibly this is related, I'm not even sure, but because I've been contacted by a couple of landowners, I think a couple of them are here today. And maybe they're aware of what you discovered because, and we'll bring this up later, but I just wanted to throw it in at this point where there are landowners who have recognized the same issue and wanted to know what procedure, if any, would be necessary for those landowners to, on their own, come to this board and request a permit or permission or whatever it takes to repair, replace, whatever those culverts, because, you know, affects their lot, their piece of property. So, again, we can talk about it later, but obviously it's something that has come to the attention of, you know, other landowners, and apparently there are at least a few landowners that are willing to volunteer to help correct the issues on their own at their own expense, but want to do it through a process or procedure adopted by this board. So anyway, we can talk about it later.
I think if those landowners are here, if they want to reach out to Mike, and then Mike, you can let me know, because we're out there fixing these problems as we come across it. So if somebody sees one somewhere else, you can certainly, you know, move over and work on that while we're there. But as we've come across these, we've been fixing them, removing the blockages, and the water has started to flow again. So it's...
And Mr. Berman, I think the things that are in the agenda related to connections that are outside of the district coming in, and these are all internal.
Correct.
Right. Those in the past have always just been handled by the board.
These are just internal.
And Zach, have you been letting our engineer know where you have uncovered those, so he has it on his?
I'm building a map. I can share it with everybody. You can even put it on the website if you'd like. But it's an interactive map that shows all the culvert locations with pictures. There's quite a few of them out there.
Thank you.
If I could insert something, I don't see anything out there on Des Moines that hasn't been out there for probably 50 years. I don't see any new culverts have been installed. I've seen a couple that have been replaced correctly. But to think that you will find when it rains hard out there and some of those canals fill, they will actually go the other way and go back onto the property until the canals are lowered. But the west to east flow works very good. It's got culverts underneath town road. It goes all the way to our outfall and on into the water control structures. So the water does move from west to east. We've been doing that over the years. It happens. But the idea is to take more surface water off of PalMar and move it into the canals or move it east. And I don't see the necessity of any of that. I think it works good just the way it is.
Are there any other questions for field maintenance? Hearing none, we move on. Old business number 1. At your last meeting, you requested to leave this agenda item update on the proposed question for the Attorney General's opinion regarding PalMar Water Control District granting of easements. You guys requested to leave this on the agenda. Mary, has there been anything you need to update the board on? Is there anything from the board regarding this item. It's kind of still sitting out there, but there's been no movement on it. Do we want to leave it on the agenda for future updates?
I don't think that we can get an Attorney General's opinion. After the last AG opinion that I saw that was requested by Martin County, the Attorney General stated that because there's ongoing litigation, they're not going to opine. So I don't think that trying to move this agenda item forward I don't think it's the appropriate time until after the lawsuit's over.
I'm confused.
Yeah, you just,
That was not the Attorney General's opinion that was requested. Sarah Lewis, Martin County Attorney, and Ms. Viator knows that. It had nothing to do with the easements.
There's an Attorney General opinion that I'm relying on that Martin County requested having to do with the payment of
The
assessments.
And the question of whether Martin County would be able to vote, but it was predicated on whether there was prior assessments outstanding. They were relying on the lower court that was saying that their lands were not accessible.
Correct.
So based on that, the AGO's office came back and said if it's something relating to this pending litigation, they would defer from going forward with it.
Right. And in the past, the Attorney General has opined on 298 matters. And in the past, the Attorney General has declined to opine on 298 matters that are tied up in litigation. Since this matter is...
No.
I'd like to recognize our Palm Beach County Attorney, Karen.
Right. The matter of the easements is not tied up in litigation. It's the matter of the assessments with South Florida Water Management and Martin County. So there's no reason to think that if we submitted this Attorney General opinion now, that the Attorney General would not consider it. Am I correct?
That is a possible interpretation.
so how do we move to number 2 if we haven't resolved number 1?
I totally agree. I don't think that anything that hinges on that decision shouldn't be considered.
Absolutely not. It would be negligent for this board. I'm not aware. Explain, correct?
So what do you want to do with agenda item 1?
We want to continue to make sure we get an opinion from the Attorney General, and once we get an opinion, then we can consider number 2. But at no point in time can we consider number 2 without number 1 being determined.
Well, speaking directly to the question about requesting an Attorney General opinion, this started 9 months ago. And what I have heard was just an awful lot of back and forth nonsense, in my opinion, because the lawyers for PalMar Water Control District had suggested language to request this opinion. Then there was a disagreement between them and lawyers for Martin County and lawyers for Palm Beach County as to what that wording should be. And the only excuse that I heard from the lawyers for Palm Beach and Martin County was, we don't like the question that was being proposed by the PalMar attorneys because absolutely the Attorney General is going to say it's okay. That's what I heard. That's what the record will reflect. So if we're going to request an opinion, and I think we're long past that, I think we can move forward without the opinion. It would be the opinion language, question language, that was drafted by the PalMar attorneys only, with no other additional modifications or input from anyone.
And to the board, I mean, you could go ahead and do that with the understanding that Martin and Palm Beach County could always add their response to that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what you're saying is, you still want to consider number 2 without number 1 being determined.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. At every opportunity.
Your lawyer is disagreeing with you.
Well, the thing is that you could still go ahead and do your AGO opinion and going with the proposed opinion that our office prepared based on your initial direction. And if Martin and Palm Beach County wanted to raise objections, they can provide comments. But based on the procedures and the way that AGO opinions are required to be submitted, that would accomplish both purposes.
So if we go with the opinion that you have written,
Yes, ma'am.
and that gets submitted.
Yes.
Again, until there is an AGO opinion, number 2 should not be considered. Whether it's your opinion, whether it's your writing the question, or you're writing the question with Martin and Palm Beach County. Again, it says this should not, I am saying that number 2 should not be considered until number 1 is decided. So I think if we submit your opinion, or your, excuse me, not the right wording.
The district's opinion.
If
that
we
our office
submit the
drafted.
district's opinion and wait for the AGO to opine on that. Once that happens, then we can vote on number 2, but I will not vote for number 2 before number 1 is considered.
Let me back up again. And this goes all the way back to whenever it was, November 2021. When this issue was first brought up, and I'm not intending to put you guys on the spot here, but if my memory serves me, the statement that was made at that time was that this action, a proposed action by this board, did not require an opinion from the Attorney General, that the district had the ability, the authority to do what it was proposing to do. And it was something of, acquiescent to requests from attorneys from Martin and Palm Beach County that this board agreed to move forward seeking that opinion, but that's when all the nonsense started about exactly what it was going to say, how it was going to be worded. So I guess my question is there any requirement for an opinion from the Attorney General that is necessary prior to the board taking any action, whether it's, to record this easement or not?
Well, all I was going to say is when the item was first brought up, the item was originally brought up to approve the easement. The initial challenge was in which way does the district own the property? The board directed Mary's office to do title work. That title work came back that the district owns the property, and then at that point, the item was brought back up again to record the easement, and I believe that is when Martin County and Palm Beach County objected and asked for an Attorney General's opinion. So yeah, it was several steps.
I agree.
Until we got to this point.
Okay.
And the Martin County being a very large landholder completely objects to us moving on to this. So if we're supposed to be representing the landholders here, so I'm just saying we've got quite a bit of land that is held by people that are objecting to us moving forward with this. Period.
Well, I think Bob had a question.
I think that it got resolved.
No, the question was, do we
Is
need...
it required
Yes.
to do it? No, but that's the direction of the board, how you all want to direct us to do that.
Right, and we did that, in my opinion, as a courtesy to the attorneys from Palm Beach and Martin County, which ended up...
No, you were going to do it anyway. It was already written. Mary had already written the opinion. And then Palm Beach and Martin said, no, we would like some changes and we would like some additions. But the request was already made by this board prior to Palm Beach and Martin County attorneys being involved. The request was made by the board. Mary wrote the opinion on behalf of this board. So now you're saying you don't want the opinion?
I'm saying, I think what I just heard is we don't need the opinion.
No,
If we
what
don't-
we heard was, we don't need Palm Beach and Martin County to weigh in on the opinion. We can go with the original opinion that Mary wrote.
But that's not my question to Mary. My question is, and I think it was already answered, is an Attorney General's opinion required? And the answer was no. So we can move on to number 2 without addressing number 1.
But of course, on anything, we would have to defer to the direction of the board.
Correct.
So I'd like to make a motion to keep number 1 on the agenda and continue it to the next meeting.
Well,
Don't even know how to vote.
I don't think it's resolved. I think we keep it on there, but I don't think it's appropriate to
So you want to keep it on there, but then you still want to vote on something that requires
Correct.
one way or the other. So
We're gonna
you're
keep
putting
it
the
on.
cart before the horse.
Well, we're going to keep it on, and if we don't need it at the next meeting, then we take it off then. It doesn't hurt to keep it on.
Pretty obvious you're trying to jam something down amongst the story here. Go ahead.
Again, we are ignoring our attorney's suggestion of not doing anything substantive before the landowners meeting. So I am not going to vote in any way, shape, or form for number 2.
Well, we're on number 1 right now.
I know, but you're on number 1 because you want to get to number 2. So I'm just letting you know where I stand.
So there's a, sorry.
Have we ever submitted a question to the Attorney General yet?
No, because I've not,
Okay.
our office has not received final approval to submit it,
Understood.
but it has been prepared.
So we currently have a motion on the floor from Zach to keep old business item number 1 on the agenda for the next meeting. We have a second.
Does that even require a motion? That's just board direction, right?
I mean, that's fine, just board direction. Is there consensus with the board to keep that agenda item on the agenda for the next meeting?
If it's something we're truly going to consider.
I don't know if we're truly going to consider it or not, so.
This is just a way to punt to number 2.
All right, so do we want a motion, do we want consensus?
Either way is fine.
Consensus is fine.
Consensus to keep
Keep it on.
Consensus. All right. Any other discussion on the Attorney General's opinion? Hearing none. Moving on to item number 2. Consider granting and recording of drainage utility ingress-egress easement to landowners on the map over the district's 3 parcels extending from Beeline Highway to the Jupiter Grade. As a reminder, this was the original motion, or the original agenda item that was brought up back in November of 2021 with the one modifier of the word recorded and recording. The original item was to consider granting at our meeting on June 27th. The request for the agenda item was to add and recording to the consider granting. With that said, I will direct everybody to the one handout. We received this from your attorney's office yesterday, so we did not have, we had already committed these books, so it is a separate item, and I will turn over the rest of the conversation to Ms. Leisler.
And Mr. Bill Dunn from our office was involved with this originally, and I'm going to let him address the board if you have any questions or give you a little summary.
Yeah, I don't know if there's questions. I mean, certainly it's granting the easement, and if approved, it would do that. Again, you know, following the board advice, we recommend that it not have action taken on it today because of the election issues that are pending. Another issue that raises its head, in our mind at least, is that if the easement is approved or granted and later rescinded or limited, then there could be potential property rights claim made by landowners, and I think that would place the district as a whole in jeopardy. So that being said, we were directed to prepare a document, which we did, and it's been distributed. We did include a provision in there that it could be rescinded without harm or property damage claims being made to the district, but that may not be foolproof. And so again, the recommendation would be to hold on, until the election issue is taken care of on August 22nd. And I don't know if there's any questions.
I make a motion that we remove item number 2 from this agenda and determine and resolve this once the election has been certified.
I would second that and add that we just received this yesterday afternoon.
Yes,
I mean, like 12 hours ago.
yes.
Having any chance of vetting it in Martin County, I'm sure Palm Beach County, and also making our property owners that we represent aware, that's just flat out wrong, period. So I enthusiastically second Commissioner Marina's motion.
To be clear, it was to table this item until after the election is resolved.
Correct.
Try that again.
So I have discussion on the agenda item on the easement, response to Mr. Doney, but I will wait for that until after this motion either passes or fails. Is that appropriate, Michael? I think there's some discussion that needs to take place, but I think since a motion was made, we have to wait until, I don't want to speak out of turn.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion regarding the motion?
Yeah, I'm going to vote against the motion for the purposes of at least discussing.
You can have a discussion without a vote. It's usually motion, second, discussion, then
That's how it works.
And if there's participation from the audience, that comes too.
Well, my discussion isn't regarding the motion. It's regarding the agenda item. That was my question.
Right, that was my point. My point was,
Well, the motion is to table the agenda item. So if you have a discussion regarding the agenda item,
Now the appropriate time?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it for me.
What do you think, Mary?
It's part of your discussion as to whether you want to table the discussion. Is that correct, Commissioner? Then it would be considered part of the discussion.
All right, let's discuss. Mary and Mr. Doney, I appreciate preparing the easement. I like it. I think it's great, except for 2 paragraphs. Mr. Doney, your concern that you brought up was the paragraph, section 3, where rescission of easement, where that could be a problem down the road. For example, if a landowner sells a piece of property to somebody else that has access, and then that person goes to sell it years later, and that access is removed. It's a property rights issue. I do not think that PalMar should open itself up to those issues. For that reason, I have distributed to everybody a revised easement, which removes section 3.
Excuse me, Zach, but this is just so out of bounds because you are not the attorney for the district. You have taken the attorney's document, made the changes that you want, and you want to say that people can go in and make improvements and not get a permit from us or a governing entity. Are you crazy? I'm sorry, Zach, but I generally don't lose my temper. I'm going to lose it right now. This is inappropriate. I realize you are an attorney, and you don't let us forget that every time you speak. But you know what? Sometimes attorneys are not the smartest people in the room. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. I will walk out of this meeting right now. I will not accept your substitution of what was written by the attorney that represents the entire board, that represents all of the landowners. This is inappropriate. And inappropriate that we got it yesterday when I was in a hospital and wasn't even able to review it. So no and no. And there you go. I had my hissy fit.
so question, Mr. Doney.
Hold on, I'm almost done.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So this document that I passed out to everybody,
Yeah, you passed out, not even the attorney. You're not our attorney, by the way.
this document that I passed out are my notes on the document that we received, and I thought that passing it out would be the best way to let everybody know as far as what my comments are as one of the 5 supervisors. We often pass things out on this board to inform other supervisors of our notes. Lou, you pass out pictures. Bob, you often pass out things. This is my handout.
I will
like
repeat
it.
myself. I do not like it. I do not think it is appropriate. And I do not think you are the attorney that represents this board.
So, Mr. Doney, what I did is I removed section 3 and section 4 because I agree with you. Those concerns I think are valid. And with the removal of those 2 sections, I think that the easement is, in my opinion, as one of the 5 supervisors, I think it's proper to record.
And I would like to just explain to the board, the actual motion that we had at the last meeting was to prepare and record. And we did not feel that that was appropriate. That's why, for the board's consideration, they needed to know what was being proposed because we were being put in a very difficult situation. So that it was incumbent upon us, our office, to make sure that there was something in front of this board if this matter was going to be considered. And that's why you have that. And we felt you needed to have that information.
I represent 1.5 million people who are landowners in PalMar. I haven't had a moment to read this. I'm not going to make a decision on this. I'm going to confer with the attorneys that represent those 1.5 million people. I'm sure that Commissioner Jenkins is also going to confer with his attorneys that represent the 400,000 people.
160.
How many?
160.
Oh,
That's the
sorry.
size of your-
You guys are tiny. But you own a whole lot of land in PalMar. So without being able to confer with our attorneys, this would be imprudent of us to vote on today. So again, I reiterate my motion, because not only does it give us a little bit more time to review this, we also shouldn't be making any decisions this large with a question of what the election results are going to be. So my motion was
To table this agenda item until after the results of the election have been decided.
have been certified.
Okay, been certified.
And we,
Doing anything other than that is just
but we,
Irresponsible.
irresponsible, unethical. I mean, we could be here all day with that.
but we're expanding the discussion on that motion
Right.
to include
Yes.
some questions maybe more directly related to the easement and so.
We're still in discussion.
Yeah,
A
so,
procedural item that Commissioner Marie held first meeting.
right. So, yes, like the rest of the board members, I didn't receive, Zach's notes here till this morning. However, on my own, and I didn't make copies, I probably should have made additional copies for other board members, but somewhat likewise. So I went back, I didn't obviously look at all of it, but I started to review past easement dedications. And I could not find one that had anything even remotely similar to your Section 3 in any of those grants of easements. I didn't find it. It appeared unusual to me that this language regarding the rescission. And so my question is that normal, or was that added because of the whole situation that we're talking about here?
It's not typically there, but given the circumstances of a contested election and a board that may come in that would certainly not approve this, we thought that provided the best protection that we could put in for PalMar. I mean, ordinarily would be, and everybody's happy we're going to grant these easements, and you ordinarily wouldn't have the rescission language in there, but given the circumstances, we thought that's the best way to protect the district from future claims. If another board comes in and says, hey, that was really a bad idea, that easement should have been granted.
Well, that was the question. Like I say, I couldn't find any precedent for that kind of language in a grant of easement, so I just wanted to kind of know where that came from. And I understand and I appreciate the fact that you had attempted that. So the other amendment you were talking about was
Number section 4.
Assignment.
Grantees shall not sell, assign, or transfer any of the easements, authorizations, or rights created hereunder, either directly or indirectly. My concern was that if someone sells a piece of property and there's this easement's in place, this easement is a right of that property owner and transfers with the ownership of that property. And my concern was section 4, by saying grantees shall not sell, assign, or transfer, that in transferring a piece of property with the benefit of this easement, that would be a sale, assignment, or a transfer of the easement.
I think that would be a sale or transfer of their property that they were selling. I don't think the easement would be whatever the easement says it is.
You don't think that would, because they can't, I mean, you understand what I'm saying, but I think the easement, the ability to access a property through an alternate means that's recorded, that's a benefit that runs with that property, with the ownership of the property.
Maybe that wasn't the best worded paragraph. I think it's pretty standard assignment language. But I mean, the intention would be, if granted, the easement would run with the land in the sense that future owners of land within the district would have the benefit of it.
So you're not concerned that Section 4, that when a property was sold, you don't think that would include the benefit of this easement? When a property is sold and would violate Section 4? Because it says, without the prior written consent of grantor. To me, I take that if anybody wants to sell a property in PalMar now, they need the written consent of the 298 district.
But that wasn't intended. Maybe it needs reworded or revised to clarify that, but it was not intended every time a piece of property sells it.
Right. I understand. I'm just trying to be careful.
Yeah.
Again, I would like to say, I'm not going to vote on a document that is a legal document, that is a binding document that could affect the future of PalMar without having sufficient time to review it. I don't think that's fair to any of us.
Well, there's still a motion on the table, right?
Correct. My motion is to postpone this until after the election has been certified.
In this discussion, I understand that some board members would like more time to review this easement. And also, given the Section 4, maybe we can change language of Section 4 to make sure that a transfer of property, just to clean it up a little bit. And maybe August 4th, the August 4th meeting that's still scheduled, would be a more appropriate time to review this after, people
We've
have...
already said that August 4th, the reason that we did not have the special election set for August 4th was because the majority of us are not going to be available August 4th. So when we keep talking about August 4th, the reason we set the special meeting for August 22nd was because we couldn't come up with a date in the beginning of August for all of us to be here. So August 4th is not even a discussion. August 4th is not a meeting. I'm not going to be there. And I think Lou said he wasn't going to be there.
Correct.
So we won't even have a quorum. So August 4th is off the table. Let's just put that out there and put that to bed.
So what I was attempting to do was to ease the concerns of not having enough time to review the document. I understand everybody wants to do that. But I guess I didn't need to make that suggestion. So apparently it's not about not having time to review it. It's about not making a decision until after the landlord election.
That's not true, Zach. That's completely, we're just...
Go, let it all out, Commissioner.
August 4th, everybody keeps referring to August 4th, from our last meeting, it was made evident that there will not be a meeting on August 4th because we won't have a quorum. So any discussion of a meeting on August 4th is invalid. That is the reason we came up with August 22nd, because that was the only date that we would have a quorum going forward. Luckily, we were able to come up with one today. How we did that, I have no idea. I wasn't supposed to be here. But putting this, again, the motion is, regardless of whether you think we should have a meeting on August 4th, because we can't, there won't be a quorum, you'll be here by yourself. Well, actually, you'll be here with Bob, but then you can't vote on anything. So, again, the motion is to postpone this discussion until after the certified election, which is hopefully August 22nd.
Is there any other discussion on that particular motion, tabling the item until...
Oh, I'd love to, but I'm done. This is, we beat this horse right in the ground.
And it's to postpone
This agenda item specifically until after the certification of the
whenever
election.
that may be.
Right.
Then we take up this item then, after the next election.
After the election's been certified.
I'm sorry.
Is the language that the commissioner used it. Any other discussion?
Just to remind me, Mary, referring by memory, which is a terrible thing to do, the results of the election are certified by the Board of Supervisors.
No, it's the landowner.
The election is certified during the landowners meeting. The board member elected to fill the seat is sat during the regular board meeting, but the election is certified during the landowners meeting.
Is there going to be a, I'm sorry, are we scheduling a regular meeting on August 23rd after the landowners?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
22nd is the
22nd.
landowners reconvene meeting.
Okay, so if the election is not certified on then this same board is going to reconvene right afterward.
Correct.
Correct.
If there's not, until Zach's seat is the seat that was up for election this year.
Yes.
Until that election is certified, Zach remains in that seat. So until we seat a new board member to replace Zach, Zach remains in the seat as, I don't remember the exact term. It's not
That's what, can I just read it,
Yeah.
just so we have it for the record, that until the successor is elected and qualified pursuant to the provisions of section 298.11, 2 Florida statutes. And there's also some supporting AGO opinions on that too.
Have we ever had a regular board meeting before the landowners meeting the same day?
On the same day, not to my knowledge. At least not since I've been the manager, and I would be surprised that you'd do that. I don't know why you do it that way, but this district has existed for 50 years, and I'm not 50, so I don't know.
Is it possible to do that?
That is not what the motion is on the table.
Correct.
So this is discussion.
We were just asking questions. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, technically, you can have a meeting whenever you want, as long as you advertise it with enough time. There's advertising requirements, and you have to have a quorum. Those are requirements to have a meeting.
Can I call the vote, please?
All right, there's no further discussion. Motion on the table to table this item until the election has been certified. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No. You were an aye?
Yes, I was.
That motion carries 3-2. Item number 3, old business, update regarding litigation. Mary?
Yes, just to inform the board that the Florida Supreme Court has not yet accepted jurisdiction with regards to this appeal. So it's still status quo.
Is there any questions for the attorney regarding this?
And just to clarify that PalMar is not involved with any of the motions or whatever for this at this time, because we did not enter into the appeal. But under the appellate rules, we wouldn't be impacted, but the Supreme Court is not taking jurisdiction.
This is purely for informational purposes
Yes.
as far as this district is concerned.
Absolutely, thank you.
In simple terms, they haven't agreed to look at it yet.
That's correct. Sorry.
They have not accepted or declined. We're still waiting.
All right, sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
Where are we at with the appellate?
What?
The appellate court? Isn't already waiting on a
The appellate
final?
court has issued a mandate, I don't have the exact dates, but they have issued a mandate indicating that basically stating that their opinion is the final mandate for what their ruling was.
Have they issued a final judgment?
No, that needs to be in the Hope St. Lucie case.
Correct.
In the Hope case, that there's a motion, there's a pending motion for a final judgment. That has not been finalized.
So that's sitting out.
Yes.
So there's two things still sitting out. One, if the Supreme Court's going to hear the case.
Yes.
And two, the final judgment of the appellate court.
Dealing with
The trial court.
of the trial.
Correct.
It goes back to the trial court.
Good, thanks. Good.
All right, moving on. Update regarding mowing proposal. Lou?
We've done all of our homework. Tim is here today. It's ready to go. We discussed anything that needed to be discussed. I think we need to, they were concerned about inflated fuel costs over the last 4 months. So
If I recall, the couple of questions were, A, his kind of expectation on was this amount going to be a reoccurring amount going forward? What are fuel costs going to do to us? And B, has any of the work being done out there affect the proposal he gave us, because the proposal was 3 months ago?
that I left that discussion for Tim to take care of that.
So as of now, you have up to 8% completed. I'm willing to negotiate my price 8% in regards to the inflation of fuel too. So I'm willing to subtract up to 8% of what's been done, but I would like a credit of the additional fuel costs since March.
Okay, so to be clear, so it would be, and you don't have the exact figure with you, but we would be subtracting the work that's been done, but then adding in the additional fuel cost. We would end up at some new number. We just don't have that exact number. Is there any questions for the board?
I think that's valid.
That's fair.
It's there. Wish we had a number.
So my concern, going back to the landowners meeting and the elections and the funding for PalMar. Yes, we received funds because Martin County paid some real estate taxes. Because of the pending litigation, we don't know if any more are going to get paid. We don't know if they even had to pay those. Further, as per regulations, Florida regulations, the way that the taxes were paid, Martin County is supposed to receive a refund on property taxes that were overpaid. And Michael, the first report that you received, were there overpaid property taxes from Martin County?
Can I say something? Martin County does not pay property taxes.
Assessments.
Woods County Attorney. We are immune.
Oh.
It's not taxes.
Assessments. Sorry. Thank you. So assessments.
So originally we were given a dollar figure, and we asked for backup to which properties those dollar figures applied to.
Correct.
The original backup that we received, the amounts paid on several of the properties seemed to be in excess of what the rate was supposed to be.
Correct.
We got the Martin County tax collector eventually sent an updated list claiming that they had made a decimal point error on some of it and reapplied those funds to additional properties. So the dollar amount did not change. It was reapplied to other properties. So that's how that was the process.
So the question remains, if some properties were overpaid and if the proper procedure, this is just my question, if the proper procedure was followed with the county that's followed with every other taxpayer in Martin County. I don't think it was, that's yet to be determined, but my concern is that if Martin County is entitled to a refund and then have to repay, we might have to give some of that money back for a refund.
So what I would say on that is they did provide an updated property list that included additional properties and applied those amounts to the additional properties. So now, based on the last list given to me by Martin County, none of those properties have overpaid.
So it's my concern that since the procedure wasn't followed, they might have to go back in time and correct things. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, I'm just saying it's a concern. And if that happens, my second concern is that that affects monies that we have in our bank account. Therefore, I don't think it's the appropriate time to spend 68,000?
Well, it will be adjusted.
Well, whatever the number comes to based on fuel and
Down some and up some, we're not going to around the same, who knows?
Given the, I mean, you haven't talked about culverts. Have you talked to the contractor about culverts?
No, this is only mowing.
Only mowing. So the hidden culverts and everything else, we're having it done for free now. My guys have downtime, able to do it. The water is moving. I don't think it's the appropriate time to spend $68,000 right now.
This is a one-time charge to get the land to where it needs to be. We have the money. I suggest that we take care of this now before next year comes back and it is a higher cost and we won't have the money. We need to do this. I think that the 8% adjustment, if you take this and you divide it by 12 months and you've been mowing for 4, then there's going to be an 8% adjustment on 8 months. So I believe that this is a prudent thing for us to do for the works of the district to maintain the integrity of the property. This is only now. This is not on a quote that's going to come to pass next year. There are money in, and regardless of whether Martin County has to refund or whatever you were getting at, it's not going to affect our budget. And we are already talking about lowering the assessment rate now. I think this is an appropriate thing for us to do at this point in time with the 8% adjustment based on 8 months of work. So I make a motion that we accept this quote and move forward so that the rest of the work can get continued and done.
Well, to be clear, we don't actually have a quote at the moment. We have the prior quote, the board would have to approve staff to negotiate, probably with a not to exceed, because then we would need to adjust that to remove costs for work that's been done by Zach, but then add in costs for additional fuel for fuel increases in fuel rates. So we don't actually know what the dollar amount would be at this time. If we were to move forward, I would recommend we approve a not to exceed and allow staff to finalize the amount with.
Tim, do you have that dollar amount?
With Lou.
Where you want to be at as of today with the adjustments?
If I took off 8%, you guys completed 8% of my number.
Yes, sir.
It's $5,440.
Where are you getting 8%?
4,000. I measured, went out to yesterday, looked where you guys had mowed and completed. I have a scale to run on the same map that I put on the.
Do you have that for the rest of the board to review?
No.
Okay.
So, let me point something out. When I came back on this board is in charge of the maintenance of the district, which has been totally ignored for almost 4 years. It's appalling out there what is now compared to what it was. We've had a contractor doing that, but he was flat mowing, and there was a chance that maybe he wasn't understood the magnitude of it. But when Bob and I rode out there and looked around, we realized that this is something we have to get under. This is what we do. This is one of our biggest expenditures.
Well, and to be clear, the board was doing it and they had to stop when Martin County and South Florida chose.
I disagree with that. How can you stop?
Well, that's what the board decided.
Yeah, I understand that. And the board decided to stop it at $23,000 a year when we had 180-some thousand in reserves. Why did we stop?
In fear of legal, at the time, it was the fear of the unknown legal cost and what it would result in. Because when South Florida unilaterally decided to stop paying their assessments, it was after the district had already approved their budget for that year. So we didn't have the ability to up our rate for the anticipated loss of revenue, which was substantial. So the fear was that if we continued mowing, in addition to legal costs, we had no recourse for upping the assessment for over a full year, and it was prudent for the board to save all funds possible because of the legal situation that we were put in by South Florida and Martin County.
With it, Zach is mowing now, and he's doing an excellent job, there's no doubt about that. But at the present pace, it's going to take a while where we could get.
No, I'm just letting you know why the board chose to stop doing the maintenance that you're claiming is our responsibility. Well, our hand was forced in that by lack of payment from a major like that.
I think anything Zach's done and paid for has been a benefit to it. I don't want that to be construed in any other way. But I think the mowing is probably going to have to be separate from the maintenance contract with an adjustment like we've been discussing.
So Tim, you know the 8% is what comes off, but do you know how much needs to be added in for fuel increases at this time, or is that something we'd have to figure out?
Give or take about $2,500.
Okay, so we're still talking about slightly less than the original 68.
Within, say, $35,000 to $4,000 credit is what you'll get.
Right. So we would be looking to approve. We could keep the current quote of 68 as a not to exceed, understanding that we would get a new quote that should come in somewhere just below it.
So how long before you think you'd be able to start?
Within 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks. How long do you think it would take?
30 to 32 days.
A month. So in 6 weeks, it would be done.
Without extra flooding or anything? Yes.
When we're talking about the entire district, even the flat mowing that Jack has been taking care of stuff, the 8%, that 7.5% to 8% that we projected have been completed, is only the areas that the canal banks have been cut clean, flat, and trimmed back. And other areas Zach has mowed in the past, but some of them have already grown up. So hopefully we can bring this all to one footprint at one time so that we have a time cycle annually from then on.
And this includes all the vegetation, trees, brush, grass, down to what, 6 inches, Mr. Higgins, on the canal banks and on the roads?
There are a couple situations where there's extreme large trees on the banks.
Right.
That would remain.
So it's not the proposal, you're going to leave some trees.
Over 12 inches, yes.
Trees over 12 inches to remain.
Is that in the proposal?
No, it is not. But there's less than a handful of those trees.
Do those include cabbage palms?
Cabbage palms, yes, would be removed.
Even if they're greater than 12 inches?
Yes.
Okay, so you're
They're
talking
fibrous trees, not a pine.
Hardwood trees.
Correct.
The trees he's talking about have never been cut.
Are they Australian pines?
There is a situation where there's a clump of Australian pines that would be removed along the bank and would have access along the top of grade. But past that, they're large and they're not included in that contract.
So over 12 inches, such as Australian pines?
Correct.
So what we're talking about is a not to exceed amount, is that correct?
Correct, because we don't have the exact figure here to approve. It would be a not to exceed the current 68, with the understanding that doing the rough math that we've done here at the meeting, we're expecting it to come in slightly below the 68. We just don't have that exact figure now. But obviously we would have him prepare that exact figure, submit it. As long as it comes in under the 68, we would go ahead and sign it and have him start the work as soon as possible.
So I will amend my motion to say we accept this quote with a not to exceed amount of $68,000.
Second.
And the criteria for the mowing was in the original. I believe I gave you a copy of it. I definitely gave the criteria for mowing to Bob so that we're clear of what gets mowed and what doesn't.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve the mowing contract with a not to exceed 68, subject to final review by staff. Is there a second? Need a second? Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
That motion that motion carries 4-1.
No offense. I just don't think we have the money.
All right. Moving on to old business number 5.
I have, Mike, sorry.
Sure.
I have a question now regarding the ongoing maintenance, what's happening as we speak.
Okay.
So since the board has chosen to have a contractor go out there, what's the board's direction for lumberjack land maintenance as far as mowing and checking culverts and things like that? Is that still?
So currently the board has an agreement with Lumberjack to do mowing, culverts, and other maintenance items. At the last board meeting, we wanted to make sure that there was a 60-day provision in there. I don't remember, was it already there or did we have to add it?
It was added.
It was added.
Based on their direction, they approved it with that.
All right, so it was added. There was some questions as to whether it was already in there or not, but it was added.
I'm just looking for direction as far as, like right now, there's 2 machines operating. Two machines operating out there. Do we want them to stop? Do we want to send a message, or do you want them to keep going? What is the board, now that things have changed with the mowing, what's the board's direction?
I would continue with the culvert restoration and just discontinue the mowing until the contract work is completed.
I agree. I mean, just, you can see any time on the mowing now that we're going to have mowing. The maintenance for the culverts and stuff like that would still be your responsibility. Their responsibility is mowing.
So to kind of come in after them with the culverts and still maintain, make sure we got water flow and things aren't obstructing the canals and all that, just take the mowing out?
That would be my...
Until the first initial mow is done, and then to pick up on maintenance?
Sure. I mean, I understand exactly being with the guys how the mowing is. But at this point, it would seem like our maintenance contractor should be overseeing the mowing. Unless you want me to continue to work with these guys until all the mowing is completed one time. I've already made arrangements with FWC. I've discussed it. We're pretty well doing exactly as what's on the original map that's on the website. I spoke to them about access. We're pretty well ready to go. What I'm volunteering to do is go out to make sure that what we've agreed to, Wallace and I, is done. And when that's done in a couple months, then we have a footprint to follow from now on, but what gets mowed and what does not. And with that said, I would glad to do it with Zach in the presence because but that's a conflict because we're both board members. So anything, I'd either have to run it through Bob or wait each month and communicate them. I don't see any obstacles for Zach to follow up the mowers and to do what he thinks is necessary with the culverts.
Just a routine inspection, really.
It's what?
It's just a routine inspection going out there.
Correct.
If I see you, I won't talk to you.
Yeah, and I've seen the culverts. I know what you're talking about. I understand that. Who makes the decision on the culverts? Is that something you're deciding to do, or should you bring it back in here?
Well, the culverts, we've done this before. We've cleaned out culverts, we've fixed crushed culverts.
That was part of the maintenance stuff that we had in prior years.
I think if there was...
The policy we had before when we were doing repair was as long as it's in the same location, in the same size, then you don't need an engineer out there.
Okay. So I will work with Wallace until we are 100%. And we've even discussed payment agreements and stuff like that. I'm sure that you guys will take care of that behind the lines. But there are intervals in which they would like to collect. And I would say, okay, they're good to that point. if it
He'll
was
send the invoices to us, and we'll get all the appropriate information. So then, to be clear, the direction of the board, consensus direction of the board, is to have Zach discontinue mowing for the time being. Lou's going to follow the mower until it's completed. Zach will just continue on with the other maintenance items like
Anything
inspection culverts.
that comes up as a result of cutting the banks.
Yeah,
But I'll
consensus of the board.
pull up.
Shouldn't the district engineer be involved in some way? Because I think under the,
So that's what we just talked about. That
What I just said was, as long as he's replacing it with the same
okay.
size culvert, same location, it's doesn't require an engineer.
It's just that that contract is under your supervision.
Yeah.
And so, so is mowing. The criteria went to mow up the bank, 16 foot of flat, and then edge back, whatever is necessary. Zach has broadened that considerably compared to what we're probably going to see, but Bob had looked at the criteria, said that would do it. So that's what we would hold our mowing contractor at.
It just sounds to me from the discussion, there's plenty of work for Zach, even after the mowing's done by somebody else.
I don't want to get idle hands out there. It's something to do. Thank you for the direction.
We'll revisit it after the mowing is
Are you
completed.
satisfied with that?
No, yeah, I just wanted direction, that's it.